Sizing up Horford. It's a three. Good!
You don't see many role players becoming superstars too often, but that's what happened to James Harden. If you're on the younger side of the calendar and never saw Harden prior to his Houston days, you might be wondering why we're calling the Beard a role player. Well, that was what he was before. And trust us, it makes sense. Still, he became one of the best players of his generation and is arguably one of the greatest scorers in NBA history during his prime. Now, let's look at how a crafty role player turned into an NBA legend. It's the late 2000s, and the Seattle Supersonics had just moved to Oklahoma City to become the Thunder. They were fresh off a Rookie of the Year campaign from Kevin Durant, a generational talent who eventually became one of the greatest players in league history. Meanwhile, the team had just drafted Russell Westbrook 4th overall in 2008. This team looked good because the Thunder had a great scorer leading the way at the small forward spot and a Spitfire point guard pushing the tempo and feeding teammates with his energy and playmaking.
Defending Dirk Nowitzki, giving him all he could stand. Nice cut to the basket.
So, by 2009, the Thunder were hopeful that they had a dynamic duo that could eventually take the league by storm and deliver championships to Oklahoma City. So, with the Thunder securing another high draft pick in 2009, specifically the 3rd pick, they were looking to add more talent and complementary pieces to the duo of KD and Russ. That was when they drafted James Harden 3rd overall. To some people, this was a surprise. No one doubted that the best prospect was Blake Griffin, who was taken 1st overall by the Los Angeles Clippers. But some scouts wondered why the Thunder took a guard with the 3rd pick, considering they already had 2 ball-dominant players. They should have taken a big man to shore up the middle. Instead, they stuck with Harden. And Sam Presti, who was still a very young general manager at that time, took him for a very good reason. With the Thunder envisioning the ball to go through KD and Westbrook, Presti took Harden with the 3rd pick because of his shooting. During his sophomore year with Arizona State, he averaged 20.1 points, 5.6 rebounds, and 4.2 assists while shooting 35.6% from the three-point line. The entire nation knew he was already a good scorer, but the Thunder took him specifically for his shooting. He was supposed to be the guy waiting in the wings for passes from Westbrook and Durant. And he actually stuck to that role early in his career.
Long rebound to Westbrook. Here's Harden with the spot up 3. It's there.
As a rookie, Harden did not start a single game. Instead, the Thunder used him as one of their first players off the bench because he was an instant offense type of player. Harden averaged 9.9 points and shot 37.5% from the three-point line as a rookie. He did his job by entering the game from the 2nd unit to hit outside shots. His numbers weren't even that impressive for a 3rd overall pick. In fact, he was outshined by a guy named Stephen Curry, who was selected 7th overall in the same year. But Harden's shooting helped OKC win 50 games, allowing this team to make the playoffs for the first time in the Durant era. As he improved, Harden's role and minutes increased. By his 2nd year in the league, he had become the team's designated bench scorer and 6th man, playing over 26 minutes and shooting around 8 shots a game. He averaged 12.2 points, but those numbers belonged to a role player. While Durant and Westbrook were already all-stars who led the Thunder all the way to the Western Conference Finals in 2011, Harden was just a guy playing a relatively easy role off the bench. No one expected him to become as good as the pair of all-stars leading the team. But something happened during his 3rd season. With the Thunder lacking legitimate scorers outside of Durant and Westbrook, they needed a bench player to step up, take more shots, and make more plays. That was where Harden came in as the energy the team needed off the bench.
2nd block for Ibaka. Harden open for 3. It counts and the foul.
Instead of simply using him as an outside shooting threat from the 2nd unit, the Thunder actually turned him into a playmaking guard, much like Manu Ginobili when he was playing off the bench for the San Antonio Spurs. And general manager Sam Presti would know that because he spent time with the Spurs before he became the Thunder's GM. Harden shined in that Ginobili role. He was allowed to create shots for himself instead of simply waiting outside the three-point line for spot-up shots. The Thunder allowed him to actually run pick and rolls with the bench players, even turning him into a point guard at times. Surprisingly, he was actually sometimes running the offense even when he was playing alongside Russell Westbrook, and that was because he was now being utilized properly. Often listed as a shooting guard, Harden was actually a natural point guard. He often had the ball in his hands in high school and college. His teams ran their offense through him because he could handle the ball, score off the dribble, and make plays for others. It was only when he made the NBA that he wasn't initially allowed to be himself. But by his third season in the league, Harden had proven to his coaching staff that he could be a good playmaker off the bench. True enough, he actually looked like a point guard at times.
In the face with that pass from Ginobili. Harden.
He averaged 16.8 points, 4.1 rebounds, and 3.7 assists off the bench. With those numbers, all while helping the Thunder secure a top spot in the West, he was the landslide winner of the 2012 Sixth Man of the Year award. Of course, he helped his team make the 2012 Finals, where the Thunder lost to the Miami Heat in 5 games. During that series, he looked like a role player by averaging only 12.4 points on 31.8% shooting from the field. Maybe he wasn't ready to take on a bigger role just yet, especially if he were to stay with the Thunder after that season. But the fact was that the Thunder could not afford him. They knew that sooner or later, Harden was going to be asking for a big contract extension after the expiration of his rookie contract. OKC also knew that their starting power forward, Serge Ibaka, who had become a great defensive asset, was also going to be asking for a big contract. So the Thunder chose defense over offense. They traded Harden to the Houston Rockets for veteran scorer Kevin Martin. And this was the best thing to ever happen to the man now known as the Beard. It was a win-win deal. The Thunder could move on financially without overpaying its roster. Meanwhile, the Rockets acquired a player to build around. With no other great scorer to share the ball with in Houston, Harden was allowed to go crazy. The increase in touches and shot attempts gave Harden the room he needed to grow as a star. He was a first-time All-Star in 2013 and was selected as a third-team All-NBA member. He couldn't have done that if he had stayed in OKC and shared possessions with 2 ball-heavy players.
Westbrook had his give and go lane shut down, so he says, you know what, I'll get behind everybody and then feed the cutter.
But in Houston, he was allowed to be his true self, even if he still had to share the ball with a few point guards. Harden's first few years in Houston were great, and he even formed a good inside-outside combo with Dwight Howard. By 2016, he was averaging 29 points and 7.5 assists. The only problem was that the Rockets weren't exactly winning or utilizing Harden's full potential. But then, an offensive madman named Mike D'Antoni came to spice things up. Instead of putting Harden at the shooting guard spot, he envisioned him as a point guard running the offense from the top of the key. So, during the 2016-17 season, he went toe-to-toe with Russell Westbrook for the MVP award, eventually finishing as a runner-up. But he proved he could be a full-time point guard by averaging 29.1 points, 8.1 rebounds, and a league-leading 11.1 assists. Harden was now at the peak of his career, but that wasn't even his best. In the 2017 offseason, Houston acquired Chris Paul in a trade with the LA Clippers. Back to his shooting guard role, Harden still handled the ball as much as Paul did. It was more of an offense where both players took turns handling the ball and making plays. But with Paul taking some of the offensive playmaking duties away from the Beard, Harden upped his scoring to 30.4 points to lead the entire NBA. And by leading the Rockets to 65 wins, he won his first and only MVP award during the 2017-18 season. But D'Antoni took the Rockets' offense a step higher. Why not take more three-point shots per game and avoid the mid-range shot entirely?
And he picked it off. James, again, three!
This was a product of team executive Daryl Morey's Morey Ball Advanced Analytics. Basically, it showed that the most efficient shots are layups, free throws, and three-pointers. Those are the exact shots Harden was great at. So, with that in mind, the Rockets allowed the Beard to go crazy with his outside shooting and spread the floor wide open to give him room to get to the basket. Of course, Harden did his work as well. He mastered the art of drawing fouls, often forcing referees to blow the whistle by creating contact with defenders and convincing the officials that he got hit. He also mastered his unique step-back shot, which is borderline traveling, but has been deemed legal by the NBA. It was a steady diet of step-back three-pointers and drives. Defenders didn't know what to do. If they closed out on his step-backs, they were going to get called for fouls. If they gave him room to drive to take away his outside shooting, he was going to find a way to get to the basket to either draw fouls or make his layups. So, by the end of the 2018-19 season, Harden averaged 36.1 points and 7.5 assists. This was one of the greatest offensive seasons in league history, not only because Harden was scoring at such a high rate, but also because he was generating points for his teammates. The next season, he did it again by averaging 34.3 points and 7.5 assists. Critics, however, said this was all a product of the Rockets system and the NBA rules favoring Harden's skills.
Harden drives on George and draws the foul.
The argument was that any other scoring guard would have averaged 35 points in the same system. But the fact of the matter is that no other player in league history fits the Morey ball definition more than Harden does. Curry can shoot and drive, but doesn't draw as many fouls. Kyrie Irving can also do those things, but also loves the mid-range shot, which is a big red flag under Morey ball rules. Basically, it was a perfect marriage between Harden's skill set and the Rockets' microball system, which spread the floor with 5 shooters. However, all things come to an end because Houston couldn't win a title in the Harden era. The Beard realized he needed to move on and chase rings instead of stats. Meanwhile, the league's updated rules on fouls and Harden's age had caught up with him by the time he left the Houston Rockets in 2021. He slowed down and was no longer the same guy who could generate 30 points a night. Still, his assortment of crafty dribble moves, step-back jumpers, and playmaking skills allowed him to steadily average 20 points and 8 assists on a regular basis, even as he aged deeper into his 30s. Right now, Harden is second only to Stephen Curry in career three-pointers made and could very well end his career with 30,000 points. And those numbers aren't too bad for a guy who was drafted to be a role player behind Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook.